Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. The purpose of this speech is to give a speech with a purpose. One of the purposes outlined in the manual is to entertain. So the only point of this talk today is to bring a smile to somebody's face. If I can do that, I'll be happy. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I wish I had. My mother did. She grew up in southern Utah. I spent a lot of time down there with my cousins. Thoroughly loved it. So I always wanted to marry somebody from the country. I found a girl at the University of Utah that was from central Utah. And we ended up getting married. This story comes from her grandfather, Morris Cook, who was a sheep rancher down in the Fountain Green area. Springtime is lambing time, when the little baby lambs are born. It's a busy time for sheep ranchers. You know, they're typically busy with shearing around the same time, getting things ready for the summer, taking them out to the summer pasture, and so on. Morris Cook had 8 children, so this made him an extra busy man. On top of that, he was asked to be the bishop of his church in his little community down there, which is almost a full-time job in and of itself. So needless to say, Morris is a little bit stressed out at this time of his life. He went to the farm one day after lambing. Now, as it happens, sometimes the ewes don't make it through birthing, and some of them pass away, some of the lambs die. Things like that happen on a farm. And it's quite typical in our Utah farming communities to have what's called a dead pit nearby, which is usually just a big pit up in the foothills that they dig out and they take all their dead animals and dispose of them there. So Morris was at the farm with one of his young sons, Roger. He's probably no more than 11 or 12 at the time, I'm guessing. He tells Roger, go gather up all these dead lambs and put them in the truck and take them up to the dead pit. So Roger does that, and he comes to this one old ewe that passed away, and he's just too big for him to lift into the truck. So he decided he'd just tie it onto the back of the truck with a rope and drag it up to the dead pit. It wasn't too far away. So Roger does that, and he makes his run to the dead pit. When he gets there, he backs in. Now when he backs up, of course, the lamb being dragged behind gets dragged underneath the truck. Now the dead pit is not a pleasant place, obviously. It's not a pretty sight, it's not a pretty smell. So Roger, you know, he's kind of in a hurry to get out of there, doesn't want to stick around. He jumps out, throws everything out of the back of the truck, jumps back in, drives down the road, not realizing that the ewe is still tied to the back. Well, he gets back down to the farm, and there's Morris watching Roger pull up, dragging his ewe behind him. Morris shakes his head a little and kind of berates his son a little bit for being forgetful, and asks him what he's doing dragging the lamb anyway in the first place. And Roger said, well, it's too heavy to lift. So Morris throws the tailgate down, he picks up the ewe and throws it in the back of the truck. They do a few more things on the farm. He says, well, let's take this ewe back up to the dead pit, and then we'll go back into town to get some lunch. Their home was in town, their farm was a little bit out of town. So they drive back up to the dead pit. Morris driving, and he backs up, tells Roger, jump out and throw that ewe out. Roger jumps out, throws the ewe out in the pit, gets back in the truck, down they go. Up comes the ewe out of the pit, follows him back down the road, still tied on. So I dragged that lamb all the way into town. Of course, you can't see it in the rearview mirror. So Morris pulls into the home to get some lunch, and his wife Betty sees him dragging this lamb in the driveway. Morris, what in the Sam Hill are you doing dragging that lamb all through town? Oh, Morris just shook his head, cussing. Roger, I thought I told you to throw that in the pit. I saw it go in the pit. Well, he threw it back in the truck, went in and had their lunch. After lunch, Roger stays behind, and one of his other sons, Tracy, gets in the truck. They go back out to the farm. Morris says, well, we got to take this lamb back up to the dead pit. Back up to the dead pit they go. This time he tells Tracy to jump out, throw that lamb in the back of the truck. And Morris, being preoccupied with a bunch of other stuff, forgets to mention that the lamb is tied up. So Tracy throws the lamb in the dead pit, off they go. Out comes the lamb, follows him back down the road. This time they go into town, they go into the feed company. They have a little co-op down there. Now, of course, this is a place where all the farmers hang out, right? So here comes Morris driving up to the feed company, all of his farmer friends hanging out. They see him drive up, dragging his ewe behind him. Boy, did he get laughed at, berated, the whole works. And that's how Morris Cook became known as the swearing bishop.